Hello, everyone. So tonight I thought I would. Oh, for heaven's sakes! So I thought I would. I've been thinking about this a while lately. I thought, I could put my statistics degree to good use. I guess I should quit moving around. You can see me. Anyway, you can kind of see me. It's dark. Anyway, so I thought I would do is just talk about some statistics for farmers, some things that you guys might be able to use on your farm. Do some of your own testing. Um, People always are, I think, a little amazed when I tell them, people that didn't grow up on a farm anyway, that some of the places where statistics is used more than any other place in the world is in agriculture. Be it in production, out on the actual farm, be it in testing for new different crops and whatnot. It's the biggest, it's a huge portion of it. And most colleges like Washington State University and others, Purdue, Penn State, your big ag schools and others too, of course, they all have great statistics programs. So kind of keep that in mind as we go along, I guess. So, the things that we can do all kinds of testing. So I thought we'd talk about tonight just kind of the idea of testing and then some data collection ideas and some different ways to go about testing. And then I think we'll kind of do several different, video sections. We'll do like one today of one kind of test, and we'll do another kind of test in the next video, and we'll kind of see where we go from there. Anyway, the one I want to spend most of our time, I guess, talking about tonight, or the idea we want to talk about tonight is this: is suppose you have a couple of different things you want to test. For instance, you might want to know, do your crossbred hogs, right, versus your registered hogs, do the registered ones end up having more babies? Let's just say that. We'll just say something easy like that. Do they end up having more babies per litter? Okay. So in your mind, the question is, or I shouldn't say that. I should this way. Is there a difference in size of litter, between crossbred and registered? Now you're thinking, I don't care about that so much, Jay. I care about how fast do they grow. And we can do that too, man. Not a problem. And so it's just a for instance. So is there a difference between the size of the litter? By the way, we know there's a lot more involved with it than this. So this is just for an example of a for instance one. And so what you would do is, okay, well, is there a difference? Well, what does that mean? It means that if there's no difference, then we'll write this way, the average litter size for crossbreds minus the average litter size for registered will equal 0. Okay? Now we call this in statistics, and it's something that, as far as we're concerned in a farming setup, this is what's called a two-tailed test. We don't need to know that from that standpoint, but we do need to know this. Okay? We need to understand the concept of it's a two-tailed test. We don't need to understand how we draw it or set it up or anything like that to be able to use it. We just need to understand it's a two-tailed test. And it's a two-tailed test because we're asking, is there a difference? Or we might say, there is no difference. Okay? If there's no difference, then no difference means it's equal to 0. Okay? If it doesn't equal 0, okay, if in fact this average amount here, let's say it was some big amount, like maybe there's, in each case you're going to take a sample size and you're going to find, well, I sampled 10 or 15 of crossbred litters, and I sampled 12 or 14 or whatever of the registered litters, and I found an average for both of those samples. Well, as you well know, you're always going to get different, there's always going to be variation. You could get a bigger litter from the crossbred a couple of times, and then for whatever reason you happen to have picked a couple of random registered litters that were smaller. And you're like, oh, wow, look, I told you there was a difference. Well, it might just be a random thing. So in statistics, we're always talking about, is there a significant difference? Significant or as I like to say, it's sigly different. Anyway, is there a significant difference between them? There's always going to be a little difference, obviously. You're never going to be able to take two samples from two different populations and come out to the exact same size. And just because one has 11.111 pigs per liter and the other one has 11.2 pigs per liter, you cannot say that that is a wild difference. That could have been just completely 100% random. And so when we do these tests, it's important to understand, is it a situation where I'm saying is there no difference, or is there a difference? Or am I saying that crossbred litters are bigger? Now I could just as well have said crossbreds are littler, are bigger litters than registered. I could have said it the other way around. I should have said registereds are smaller than crossbreds. I could have said it either way. Okay. But in this situation, you're saying one's bigger than the other one. And we call this a one-tailed test. And you can set these tests up any way you want to. Okay? In your mind, I've raised hogs for eons of time, and I just know that these produce better. Okay. Good for you. So in your mind, you're working under the assumption, you see, that there is a difference. And not only is there a difference, the one's bigger than the other one. Okay? And that's fine. So when we do these, keep that in mind as we're going along. It's always about, are things significantly different, okay, or significantly bigger. And in statistics, we talk about a little thing called p-value. And p-value is the probability that I saw what I saw given my assumption was true. Okay, so if I assume there is no difference, if I assume that there is no difference in litter size and I get a p-value of 0.01, that's a 1% chance that I saw what I saw. There's a 1% chance that I went out and took a sample of crossbred litters and a sample of Hampshire, or registered, let's say, Hampshire litters, and there's a 1% chance that I got sample sizes that were that far apart. Okay? If it's that big, if it's that tiny of probability, I'm going to say, that didn't happen. Okay? I don't think so. Okay? Now, a word picture that I like to use is this. I have a deck of cards at school that I show all the time. No, I don't show it to kids. I pull it out of my hand and I spread them out in my hand and I say, all right, I need someone to come up here and draw a card. So they draw it out and it's a red card. How do I know it's red? Because the whole deck's red. Don't tell anybody. And so I said, okay, write it down. So kid, they write it down. Oh, it was a red heart. It was an ace of hearts, let's say. And then the next card that comes out is a 2 of diamonds. And then the next card that comes out is a 3 of diamonds. The next card that comes out is a 5 of hearts. And then a king of hearts. Okay. It's about this time where someone should say, wait just a cotton picking minute. Okay? Because the chance of that happening, half of the deck is supposed to be red. When I put the card back in, it's still half red. So the probability I pull out a red card the next time is also a half. And the probability I pull out the next time is also a half. Now right here, there's about a 12.5% chance that happened randomly with a full deck of cards. It's half and half. Well, I can live with 12.5%. That happens. I go again. Now it's about 6.25%. Well, that's weird, but maybe not unheard of. I pull out 5 red cards in a row. There is a 3.125% chance of that happening. Right there, I'm calling bologna sauce. I don't know if it's a regular deck of cards. I don't know if it's all red, but I know it's not a regular deck of cards because there's no way that you pulled 5 red cards in a row out. There's only a 3% chance of that happening. And I, as a general rule, things that have a 3% chance of happening, well, they don't happen every day because that's weird. Okay? And so what I want you to kind of keep in mind about these things is that's how these tests work as well. Okay, it would be totally exactly what you would expect if I, with a regular deck of cards, if I pulled out a red card on my first draw. No one would blink an eye. It's a 50-50 chance of doing that. On the second draw, it would be, if I got 2 reds in a row, that'd be 25%. And that happens pretty frequently too. It's not till you get down to where it's so weird that somewhere someone's got to say, no. Now, the funny thing is, some kids will cut me off right here after 3 cards. They're like, no, sorry, Mr. Groom, they're all red. I'm like, you can't say that. There's a 12% chance of that happening. You can't tell me that yet. So then after I make fun of them, then it takes them literally 7 cards or something before they say something. I'm like, okay, you should have said stop way before now, okay? But anyway, the next card that's pulled out is to the 6th would be like it's about 1.5% chance of happening, 1.5625 or something. Don't quote me on that one. It's been a while. Okay? But wow, that's teeny tiny. It didn't happen, you see, randomly. Something's wrong. Jay's been screwing with the deck of cards. And then I flip it around. They're like, why do you do that to us? I'm like, oh my God, I just told you why I do that to you. Okay? The idea is we always make assumptions. There's always an assumption to be made. And so that assumption is either true or false. And so based on our information, based on our sample, based on our research, based on our data, okay, we can either show that our assumption was wrong, or we could say, well, we didn't show it wasn't wrong, kind of a thing. Another way to think of it is kind of like OJ. We all have our opinions on OJ. He's guilty of sin. Anyway, we all have our opinions on the guy, okay? But when you go to court, okay, the whole idea is this: you are assumed innocent. That's the whole procedure. So we assume you're innocent, and then we have to quote unquote prove you're guilty. What actually we do is we reject your innocence. The idea is that we show enough evidence to say, no, you're wrong. Okay, obviously you were there. We've got your fingerprints there. We've got your DNA there. For crying out loud, reject your innocence there. Okay, you were clearly there. Okay, you had the motive. You have zero alibi. We see your car tracks in the lawn. We got you on camera across the street. We're rejecting your innocence. Okay. Now, in the case of OJ, the glove didn't fit. You must have quit and all that good stuff. He could still get off. So the idea with this testing that we do is the idea that you come in, you always assume something. Okay, you make an assumption. And so over here, and this is how the big kids write. They write as H1 and H naught. H naught, we say H0. It's H naught and H1. And you could think of this as the idea that this is the person's innocence. Okay, so we, innocent. We assume that they're innocent. Okay, and of course they're not innocent. And we write it that way for a reason. Okay, in statistics. So this is what we assume we have a decision to be made over here. Okay, in actuality, this is what happened up here. So, we come in, we present it to the court, we show it, we do all that stuff. Say that if the guy's actually guilty, okay, he's guilty, let's start over. If the guy's innocent, and we find him innocent, well, that's true. And that's what we want to have happen. Okay? But if the guy's guilty and we let him off, this would be an error situation. And if he's guilty and we let him off, this is also an error situation. Okay? If he's innocent and we hang him, this would be a problem. So this is like hanging innocent man. Okay. And this guy over here would be like OJ, walking scot-free. And then, of course, if the guy's guilty and you find him guilty, this is also true. And this is how we do this testing that we talk about in statistics always. We always come in assuming something. And that assumption is always phrased something like this. It's always something like the average is, or something similar. Is, of course, means equals. Okay? You could also say something like this: there is no difference between these things. No difference is code for equals. Okay? Of course, the opposite of that is, well, it's not equal to. And this situation is what we call a two-tailed test. And so if you hear any kind of a word picture from the problem or from your idea, what you want to test is that the average is, or there's no difference, things of this nature, it's a two-tailed test. If you hear something like this, I think crossbreds produce a bigger pig. Okay, cool. I heard bigger. I heard greater than. The opposite of greater than is less than or equal to. Okay? And another way of saying it, I think the register produces a smaller pig. So I heard less than. I heard a test like this. Okay, these are what are called, so less thans, greater thans. Okay, I could hear at least. That means greater than or equal to. Things like this. If I'm saying stuff like this in my mind, what I'm proposing is a one-tailed test. And I tell you that only because, well, for two reasons really, is because when I'm going to show you how to do this in Excel, you don't need to know all the theory behind what's going on. What you need to know is how to deal with the material. Okay, so when you get the answer out, okay, now what did I just show? What did I just prove? Okay, so here's the game. You need to be able to understand, is this a two-tailed test or is it a one-tailed test? Okay? H naught is always our assumption. We always work under that assumption. And so if in fact there's no difference in the litter size, okay, if that's true and my p-value came out to be like 0.2 or something, I would fail to reject H naught. And what does that mean? It means the average would be exactly the same. There's no difference between them. If I got a p-value of 0.01, well then I would reject that claim, or that statement, and I would go with, hey, there is a significant difference between them. Okay? Every single one of our tests will work that exact same way. Okay? Now, before we go any further and talk about anything else, of course, we're going to be talking about samples. And if you want to get good data, you have to have a good sampling technique. Okay? And so, if you have a situation like when I was in high school, my brother and my dad and I had about 30 head of sows. So we had plenty of weaner pigs, plenty of feeder pigs per year. Plenty of litters were born every year. That we could have had all kinds of data. Okay? Now, being as how I was not a statistician at that time, if you'd asked me to pick out pigs, I would have picked out all the biggest ones. And I'd have said, wow, look, aren't I doing a great job? But the problem with that is whenever you cherry pick data, you're ruining anything that you could have made, any statement that you could have made about the data, because you're coming into that from a situation where you've picked the very best. Okay? By the way, at work a couple years ago, the boss said, hey, you know what you could do in the fall on the early test is test them earlier, so that, you know, because we'd do the state test twice back then, and they said you could test them earlier and then test them again later. And then they're going to really show giant improvement. Won't that be great? And I went, oh. Because you're cherry picking purposely bad data. Okay? The whole idea is to get a true picture of what's happening. And you can't do that if you're picking ridiculously good or ridiculously bad stuff. So, if I had, you know, let's say 50 litters here, or maybe 500 litters, or whatever you want to talk about, let's say 50 litters, and let's say there's 10 pigs in each litter easily. That's 500 baby pigs to choose from. Okay, and presumably you've notched their ears, or whatever. You have some way of telling them apart. Okay, if you're doing that, then you could say, you could go out there and randomly pick some. If they're numbered by their ears, you could just randomly generate some numbers and pick them out. That will give you a good idea as to what's going on. You wouldn't want to pick the biggest, healthiest looking ones, all right, to test to see if there's a difference in feed versus these ones over here that are kind of iffy looking, okay? You really want to make sure that you get good sampling technique from that. So I will be doing a video on that as well later on. But before this video gets too long tonight, I just want to show you an example in Excel of how we could do kind of a problem that I've been talking about tonight. Okay? So the problem is registered versus crossbred litter sizes. Okay? Now again, this data would have been stuff that I would have gathered from my, crossbred and my registered sows and how many babies they had in each one. And so here would be just some examples of how many pigs were in each litter Oops, not one. You're getting cold, lady. You know, one. One pig in the litter. That's ridiculous. Okay? And maybe I just got 9 of them. Maybe I'm a smaller operator. Maybe that's all I have handy. Whatever it is. And so you test them versus your crossbreds or versus your registered ones. Oops, that's weird. That probably didn't happen. This is, of course, actual data that I've totally kept track of over time. I'm not making this up as I speak. Yeah, right. And so what you're going to want to do in Excel, if you go to File, okay, under File, you should see the Options button here. We will be using this a lot later on. Under Add-ins here on the left-hand side, if you click that, and then down at the bottom it says Go, click on Go. And you can add this analysis tool pack. Just simply click on it and then hit OK. And then under the Data tab, this Data Analysis button should show up. Okay. If you're interested in doing this, I would gladly receive an email or you can contact me and I will help you with it. We can talk about what it is you want to do. We could set up a test for you, or we could talk about how would you like to collect data. What do you want to show? Okay, or what factors are you interested in? For instance, are you interested in what breed of calf grows the fastest and with what feed? In other words, some breeds might do better with a certain kind of feed. You want to talk about corn production or whatever. Now, mind you, a lot of that stuff can be found obviously through different, in general, through like, Washington State University, things like that. I mean, obviously for all of our wheat stuff out here, they plant wheat crops all over the state, test plots, and then they test them to see, where they do the best. And so back in the day, and I will never forget this, we used to have to go into town, go into the extension office, and we'd get the reports, and we'd say, all right, here's the new seed varieties, and oh look, this one does pretty good where we live, where we get about 12 or 19 inches of rain a year. But if you go just a little bit west of us, they get about 13, 14 inches of rain or thereabouts a year. Well, the different variety worked better for them, and up towards Spokane, a different variety works for them. So some of that stuff's already been done, but then you can take it a step farther. Hey, listen, on my farm, with my practices, with my whatever, this is a better way of doing it for me. Okay? Maybe I have a small bunch of registered Angus cows, but then I also have some crossbred cows. And you could talk about, am I making significantly more money raising these versus these? Or do they grow significantly faster, or whatever it happens to be? And you can test it for yourself. You don't have to rely on somebody else. Just a variety of different things to go. You can even test it to see how efficient you are at doing something. You want to test how fast you can do your chores. You can do all kind of stuff with statistics. So I'm just going to show you several different tests, and we'll kind of see where we're going. For this one, we want to have two sample t-tests with equal variances. Okay, so here's for my one variable range. Here's for my other variable range. We do have labels. That's exciting. And then the output range, just click over here anywhere is fine. And here's what happens. Oops. I'm going to look at the data. This is what the answer the thing spit out at me. Now I wanted to know, is there a difference? So right here, this is my p-value for a two-tailed test. And I know it's two-tailed because I asked, is there a difference? Now, according to this p-value, there's a 54% chance that I got those numbers right there if there is truly no difference in litter size. Okay? So, what does that mean? Well, 54%, holy crap, that happens literally every day. So what do I say? As a pig farmer, I say, hey, there's no difference in litter size due to whether they're crossbred or registered. So if I'm making a decision based solely on that of what kind of pig to raise, that's not what I'm basing my decision on. Okay? Now, that one's kind of goofy, but then you could take it a step farther and go, well, do a registered hog, does it grow faster than a crossbred? We've always heard that, in fact, a crossbred gains or grows faster than does a registered hog. Well, you could actually test that theory yourself. You could actually test to see same bunch, two different groups of baby pigs, but everything's the same. So they're crossbreds here, they're crossbreds over in another pen. And then you could see, does this feed ration work better or does this feed ration work better? Okay? This is the same sort of things you can test. And so I'm going to be doing a whole variety of different tests like this. And I think I'll just kind of keep making little example ones. What I'd really like to see is if some of the people that I know would be interested in doing ones for themselves. For instance, I'll call out Brad, but hey, Brad. But if you have some ideas of ones that you'd like to see, okay, or if you think, hey, this might be kind of a fun one, let me hear it. So I will be walking through about 4 or 5 of the big tests that people do all the time in this situation, and then we'll kind of just work it out from there and see where we go. So I hope you liked it, and we'll kind of leave it there, I guess.